And we're through already. Yeah, because I'll tell you, see, look at this, how hacked up this main bore is. That's pathetic, man. That is in rough shape. Yeah. But I checked it, and it should clean up with a 20 cut. Now, we can go 20 and we can go 40 all at one time. In the old days, if they needed more than 40, we wouldn't even bother, because blocks were a dime a dozen. Okay. We got an old Porta-Tool line-boring bar that my dad bought way back, probably about 1971. It registers off of the front spigot on the case, and the rear main seal is the register. And the bar gets fed by a hydraulic pull feed. So all I need to do is turn it with a drill at a moderate speed. It's going to pull all the cutters through at one time. We're going with a
Let's see the cutters.
20 thousandths cut. We got 20s on the bar now. When I take the bar out, I'll show you all the working pieces. This set is set up for a 40 cut. This small cutter is on the bar up here at the front. And you got 3 of them the same size. There, there, and there. So they all get pulled one direction and making a cut in a clockwise motion. That particular one is for thrust cut.
So you're cutting it how much right now?
I'm going to cut 20 thousandths or 0.50 millimeter.
On all 3?
All of them. Yeah, the front one and the 3 big ones, 20 thousandths.
Okay.
So I need to, when I get going, it's going to be turning kind of fast. So you don't push on the drill whatsoever, see? But as it's going, as the bar's being pulled in, if you're not paying attention, the bar will pull right off of the drive.
The bar will move and the drill won't?
Yeah. It's just laying in my hand.
Auto feed.
Yeah. Cutting already. Going, I didn't tighten the feed. You know, we're gonna start this all over again. Okay. That's just a hex drive right here and here.
And it kind of floats.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That way I don't have to be dead straight.
Yep. So we should really see it eating.
Yeah.
Nothing and you don't see nothing.
So when I take it apart, you'll be able to see the cuts. Well, you can kind of
we could see it as
right in there.
As it was cutting, you could see it.
Yep. And it looks like 20 definitely cleaned it up everywhere. The block had a couple of bad spots in it right there in the front, that first part of the cut there. Kind of weird. This is the hydraulic feeder. It actually, the bar will be connected on this end, and as it turns, clockwise, it pulls, makes a hydraulic pull.
And how does that lock in?
This will release the hydraulic inside so you can move it,
With that,
tighten it.
it registers.
Oh yeah,
with
it's flat drive.
Oh, okay.
You just get tightened right down with a set screw. Got a couple of different attachments. If we were gonna cut the thrust on this block, this piece would go inside. After you take all the cutters off, you would set a specific cutter, which is this one, thrust cutter. And that thrust cutter will cut that back thrust face inside this housing. You won't be able to see that operation being done at all. I'm going to explain the thrust cut without actually doing the operation. You can assume this cutter would be on that bar inside this end cap. So it's going to be running right in there where the thrust area is. So if that were in there and we're going to get ready to make a thrust cut, we'd use this spacer, this precision cut right here.
It's precision cut for what?
It's just to ensure flatness.
Oh, okay.
Right there, and right there. And the reason is it's gonna touch down right on that surface. This housing is flat and 90-degree square from the register to that flat surface and the bore. So this, to do a thrust cut, like I say, if the cutter was in that end piece right now, the last part of this operation would be to set the depth of the cut. You're going to use this here. This stop would go in. Got a couple of feeler gauges. First, the first thrust cut on all VW bearings is 40 thousandths, or 1 millimeter. So you're going to take 40 thousandths if you want to go that route. I'm going to put that right there.
And is that standard because that's just the next size that they come in?
Standard of the industry. First thrust cut is going to be 40. You can get them in 60 and 80 for a really beat up block.
Mm-hmm.
But what you do would be to set your clearance right there. Lock it down. Of course, with some tools.
Yeah, this is just demonstration.
And I would even come around here and check and check and check to make sure I'm really right. Then this is a hand operation. This doesn't get done with a drill. So you got this mandrel.
So you don't have the auto feed on it?
Not on this. You don't have auto feed whatsoever. So this would get put in there. This handle will go in with a set screw here, and you literally would be turning this thing by hand.
Okay. While lightly pushing on it?
While pushing on the end.
Yep.
And as you're pushing and cutting, it's going to move in and bottom out. That'll be the end of 40 thousandths cut.
Okay.
Now over the years, I kind of changed my way of thrust cutting because 40 thousandths is a one-shot deal before you go up to a more severe cut bearing. And there's been cases of you don't feel right, you're not exactly right. You could cut 43, you could cut 45 instead of just plain 40. You could even cut 35. Then the thrust is too tight or it's too loose. And you can be fooled by that with an align bore because your bearing crushes tight like it should be, but you could be off on the thrust fit. So to never be off on the thrust fit, I've changed my way of cutting thrust. I won't go 40 right off the bat. I'll put 20 in there and make a 20 cut. And again, that 20 cut that I set could end up being 18, it could end up being 24. We don't know where it's going to end up. It's relatively close. But when you do it my way, I'll take your first thrust cut bearing, which is already 40 thousandths narrower to allow for this cut. I'll put that on the lathe and adjust that thrust in the bearing to fit this block.
So you're actually cutting the bearing.
We're fitting the thrust cut bearing to what we thrust cut, so you know you can control the outcome.
So really, you could take that 40 and then cut it to a 30 to fit that block.
You betcha.
Yeah.
Yep.
That way you don't end up cutting over
instead
40.
Instead of me taking a 40 cut and end up might be cutting at 45, then your thrust is going to be loose.
Yep.
And when the thrust is loose, you know, your bearing press fit is doing all the work. Well, back here you got a flywheel. Every time you sit at a stoplight, you're trying to push that flywheel and crankshaft right through the block, sitting there with your foot on the clutch. And if the thrust isn't exactly right fitting, you're gonna move that bearing in the block
And end up beating the case to pieces.
Yeah, you'll beat the case up.
Yeah. Really, you're probably no better off than what it was before you ever cut it.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
You could be have a crooked thrust that's loose, and is no better than a nice looking cut thrust that's too loose.
That's wrong.
Yeah, that's wrong. Yeah. So I just changed my way of doing thrust cuts years ago by cut less than fit the bearing. Only one problem came up. A guy had pulled it apart like a drag engine or any kind of bug race engine. You're in these things all the time anyway. And got a new set of bearings, and the bearing wouldn't fit the case. And I said, whoa, I custom fit that thrust bearing, so you're gonna have to bring that over and let me cut your bearing
Do it
to
again.
match the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's all you need is the other bearing or the block, whatever. It just
Yeah,
depends.
but
if you had the block apart, we could measure the block. If you didn't, it's no big deal. Measure the inside of the thrust on the bearing, and you do the same thing. So here's the boring bar with the 20 cutters on it, set up just like you saw it run through that block. It starts out installed in front of the main saddles that are going to be cut, which would be right there, and pulls right through them.
Now, does that bar have registers on it for those cutters?
No, the cutters actually pinch.
So you just got to know where to set it up once it's in there.
All right, register. I know what you mean now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got lines on here that your front one's always in the same place. You'd put your front cutter on that line. The next ones you got L is a late model case. E, we didn't get on that one.
I see that line.
We moved to the L line. So this E line is going to be underneath this cutter somewhere. And back here you got E, and we move back here to L. We're doing everything on L because it's a later block. When they say early on this bar, this was made so long ago that an early block is actually a 36 horse.
Oh, wow. So not even 40 horse.
Yeah. See, we'd have them all on late case, even with a 40 horse.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is old school then.
Yeah, so, and to get the thrust cut cutter in the exact space you'd need it, so you've got room for this handle to move, we would put that thrust cutter on this side, and it installs this way. The thrust cutter would be cutting that surface right there. And you'd be going around that thing by hand. You'd be going, that one's, yeah, that's cutting that way. You'd be moving around here to correct this thrust surface, which this one is in fantastic shape.
And it's never been cut before.
Yeah. Now you can see here is how the housing would be hiding it. It would be on the shaft inside that housing.
Yep.
So you can't see what you're doing. It's all by feel. Now that I've explained how it fits, how it's in there, you can't see what you're doing. You're making an interrupted cut in the first place. How there is room for error on a thrust cut. And my remedy for that was, instead of splitting hairs and trying to find a way to do it without going beyond 40, you just won't cut 40 in the first place and fit the bearing to the block. So that's quite a difference from the way this block looked in our last video when we were
and some of that stuff you're seeing is just the shavings on it.
yeah. You can see it really did cut good from all the way through. You got a little pocket right there. Yep.
But that's air.
Had some imperfections in the block, just like we. Check that out. This is what the phenomenon when they say VW blocks are porous, and some people say they just leak oil through the pores. We just made a 20 thousandths cut, which would be 10 on each side of this, and struck air. And that means this block has got a lot of imperfections under the surface, which we saw when we decked it. And there you go. I was kind of wondering if it was going to show up in this align bore too, and it did. You can see there's one little speck that might be trying to show itself right there. But really, there's nothing you can do about that. Let me wipe all this stuff out, and you can see how every part of it got cut, which is good.
But other than that one little spot, everything looked good.
Yeah, that's just a little imperfection that is nothing to worry about.
Yeah, there's nothing you could do about it anyways other than cut more, but there's no telling if you're gonna hit it in another spot. The
only way you may be able to clean that up would be to cut further. Same thing we ran into with the block decking. Yep. We could keep cutting and hopefully run out of pinholes or imperfections, but it's a good chance you won't. And you can see that little shadow in this main saddle. That little, not that, right there. You can see a little shadow right there. That's going to be a hole under that if we cut this one further.
So it would look just like that, possibly worse, maybe not as bad.
It could be round, it could be deep, it could be long like that. That long cut like that, you don't see that often. So that was really a good cut for 20, not bad, looks good. That hole right there is the oil drain hole. So
that's what we were just talking about, the intermittent cut hitting it.
Right. That thing goes down at an angle. So when the engine's running, oil pressure's running, this area is full of oil. The seal is keeping it from coming out. And when you stop the engine, the oil is going to drain down to there and stop. Well, the crankshaft seal is running around way down here. Instead of having oil laying in the block when you turn the engine off that high, we're going to drill a hole down here so the oil is going to come down and drain out and won't have a chance to leak out the seal when the engine's cut off. On the later blocks, there's a channel that's made into the block right here. It goes, it's like a little ditch. If you would take a end mill or something and go down, it tucks right around that stud and drains oil that way. Yep, that was one of the later model.
But early model cases.
This is an early model. You don't have that.
Right.
I don't remember the name of this tool, but it is made specifically for this. You can see the angle of the drill hole. And the hole is going to occur right there.
So that thing doesn't...
This was solid when we bought it, and the only time you could use it is during a rebuild. So we bored this hole. So if you got an engine with a chronic leak, maybe a crooked line bore, or who knows what or why, it just leaks all the time, you can take this will actually go right over top the crankshaft with the engine together, and we can drill this hole while the engine's together.
So you can pull the engine out, pull the flywheel off, and then drill this and put it back in?
Sure can. So what you do is you just keep pulling back as you drill and pulling your chips out, and you'll know how far you got to go, especially when you hit the other side. You can feel it with the bit, and then you just make a breakthrough, and you're not going to get much magnesium on the inside anyway, and it ends up dust. It's registered by those two bumps right there.
Right, but I meant the actual clocking
of
it.
No, you put it where you want.
Yeah.
So we just kind of sneak it over here away from the split. That's the split of the case.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a good old dry drill. Kind of get it right. Takes a little while to get through.
It's pretty thick.
And now, the thing people don't understand is magnesium is harder than you think it is. Quite a bit harder. That's what you'd be trying to do, exactly that, if the crankshaft was still in this and it was the engine together. You'd want to keep pulling them chips out here, make you break through. Like that. So you can see if this engine was together at all. That's from the line bore. You got very minimal chips that made it through the breakthrough. Drilled at an angle. Yep.
So it still is on an angle like the factory.
Yeah. There you go. I'm riding right in it. Yep. Your oil will drop down below the lip. No more leaks.
And since that was an original oil drain, you don't have to do anything other than leave it. Yeah.
Yep.